Sponsors are entrusted with the responsibility to ensure that the works of the ministry are carried out with integrity in accordance with the values and teachings of the Catholic Church.
To me, what sponsorship is a keeper of the flame or a keeper of the promise. That a sponsor assures that the good works are carried out in the real world because those needs change all of the time. But at the same time, a sponsor must also assure that those works are grounded in values and faith that do not change, that endure. The legacies and traditions, the faith traditions, the charisms, our Catholic values, our social teachings. Those are the underpinnings of the good works that we do, and you need both.
The sponsor body takes very seriously the responsibility to ensure those good works are maintained, are supervised, are faithful to who we say we are. In effect, sponsors not only provide oversight, but they provide inspiration. They provide direction. They provide a sense of hope of what will be because of this good work.
The first thing sponsorship must be rooted in is a tradition that will guarantee identity. Now, the pieces of that tradition, of course, are theological, they're sacramental, and they're moral. If you look at the three social ministries, higher education, healthcare, and social service, it could be argued that the most complicated set of moral demands are faced most often in the healthcare arena.
Sponsors find inspiration and guidance to safeguard Catholic identity in the richness and principles of Catholic social tradition.
The important elements are what makes us, in terms of Catholic identity, the elements of Catholic identity. And it begins with the dignity of the human person, treating each person as a whole, mind, body, and soul. The common good, how important our sense of community and the common good is. Our care and our special attention to the poor and the vulnerable. Our commitment to justice, social justice. Our commitment to the Catholic Church and the fact that we are in communion with all other workers within the Catholic Church and the hierarchy of the Church. Those are all very, very important.
As we do the very same things that other people do in healthcare in the United States, we have this added dimension that we have to do what needs to be done, but constantly connected to what it means to be Catholic. We live with a secular state. We live with a religiously pluralistic culture. We live with a market economy. None of those things are going to automatically be connected to our Catholic roots unless the people in the Catholic institutions say, how does being Catholic mean when we relate to the state? What does it mean to maintain our own identity and to live respectfully in a pluralistic culture? What does it mean to meet the demands of the market but not to lose either our identity or lose our soul in dealing with the strictures and the demands of the market?
It really is undertaking as a sacred trust sort of a promise that when questions are asked relative to the Catholic healthcare facilities, etc., that we ask the sponsorship questions. Who do we care for? Where is the social justice? Are our employees well paid? Are their benefits appropriate? It's asking the questions that make us different, I hope.
As stewards of ministries carried out in the name of the Church, fruitful relationships with the Vatican and bishops are essential to the ministry.
A primary responsibility that the sponsors need to be concerned about is the relationship with the Vatican. As public juridic persons, there is a direct report to Rome on an annual basis, and usually every 3 to 5 years a visit. And they ask for an annual report, and their interest is, are you solvent? That's nice. But what have you done relative to the social justice issues? You know, what is your care of the poor? Do you have other programs? And how are your employees? They ask those questions. That's what interests Rome. You really do need to work carefully with the bishops. And we have all kinds of bishops, all over the country. And you can move from one public juridic person to another and have a very different experience with a bishop in another city. So people need to be very tuned in to who their bishop is, not to surprise him ever. If something's happening, you make sure your bishop knows so that there's never an, I didn't know that. He doesn't want to learn it on the front page of the paper. So you need to have a close working relationship with your bishop.
The bishop should have the one or two people that he is absolutely going to have to speak to. And some days you're going to have to speak to them quickly because something's going to appear in the newspaper and somebody will accuse a facility of not behaving ethically or adequately. And I will need to call them to ask, how can I be supportive? We have privacy and confidentiality laws, so the amount of information you can get back from that provider sometimes is going to be very limited. Where the Catholic label is on a ministry, we have to protect our good name. Where we make mistakes, we have to apologize and correct them. So I need that designated person so everybody knows the rules about how to communicate.
The sponsor's relationship with the bishops is so important. I cannot stress enough how important that relationship is. We do have a role in Catholic ministry. The bishops have their role, and communication and relationship building is extremely important.
For some groups, sponsorship and governance are separate functions. In others, sponsorship and governance are combined. There's no one approach that works best. Sponsors focus on carrying out the mission. CEOs and board members charged with governance oversee finance, management, operations, and strategy.
There are three major ways that boards govern in the not-for-profit sector. They have fiduciary responsibilities, strategic responsibilities, and generative. In the last 15 years, fiduciary responsibilities have become very clear. We're always talking about needing more strategic conversation. You have to be very intentional about making sure the generative conversations happen. The generative nature of governance has to do with creating a vision for the future and asking the critical heart questions about what are we about? What is the mission? What is it calling us to? I would say, what is our prophetic stance? What are we being called to today? The sponsors come into the conversation at the generative level.
We developed what we call a Venn diagram. What are the responsibilities on the canonical side for sponsorship? What are the responsibilities on the civil side for the fiduciary role? And then in the middle, in the Venn diagram, we pull together what do we have in common there? What would we expect good boards to do? And among those were, fidelity to the Catholic social teaching of the Church, ethical teachings as well, leadership accountability. Both have leadership accountability to the Church, accountability to the state, to federal government.
The CEO sits with us in all of our meetings. We hear from the CEO the issues that he has to be dealing with. And he hears the discussions and the conversations that we're having. So we're in it together.
A sponsor's job is to oversee, and they are ultimately accountable for what goes on in these various ministries. They rely heavily on the chief executive officer and his or her team, right, to carry out the mission.